Good day everyone. This is for educational use only. So our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. So without further ado, let's start.
What is global divides? It's the concept of a gap between the global north and the global south in terms of development and wealth. It's about classifying countries. In the 1980s, the Brent line was developed as a way of showing the world that was geographically split into relatively richer and poorer nations. The two groups are often defined in terms of their differing levels of wealth, economic development, income inequality, democracy, political and economic freedom. As defined by the Freedom Index, the two are called Global North and Global South. What is Global North and Global South? Global North are rich countries that have a lot of wealth. These are the countries that doesn't need help from other countries in terms of building something that benefits them. They doesn't need the money because they have a lot of it, because they are rich countries. On the other hand, Global South are the countries who are developing. They are the ones who need to rely on different nations or the richer nations. They have to rely on them so that they can develop, they can build something, because in short, they're the countries who are poor and they need to be developed or developing. They need the guidance, or they need other countries to back them up to build something. They need global north countries like Australia, like the Philippines, for example. The Philippines is a developing country, but the Philippines needs other countries, like other rich countries like Australia, for the Australians to back us up on what is our idea or what are we going to build, because we don't have all the resources, all the wealth we need. So that we need other countries to back our country up to build something, because we are a developing country.
Globalization has had a profound impact on the global south, reshaping economies, societies, and cultures in various ways. Globalization can be defined as the unprecedented interconnectedness of people, societies, and economies beyond traditional national boundaries. Although globalization is not unique to the contemporary context, its current neoliberal integration is arguably unprecedented. The global south is a heterogeneous bloc, and the political, social, and economic realities of each country are often location and history specific. The global south is used loosely to capture some of the shared realities experienced by countries that are yet to achieve high levels of industrialization. One significant aspect of globalization in the South has been the integration of these regions into the global economy. Many countries in the South have embraced export-oriented economy, focusing on the production of goods and services for international market. This has led to economic growth in some areas, but has also created challenges such as income inequality and dependency on global markets. addition to economic changes, globalization has facilitated the flow of ideas, cultures, and technologies across borders. The South has seen an influx of foreign media, technology, and cultural influence. While this has contributed to cultural diversity and expanded access to information, it has also raised concerns about the potential erosion of local tradition and identities. Furthermore, globalization has brought attention to social and environmental issues in the South. The exploitation of natural resources and labor practices have come under scrutiny, leading to the
What is the globalization on North? The global North does not refer to a geographic region in any traditional sense, but rather to the relative power and wealth of countries in distinct parts of the world. The chapters in this section explore the construction and complexity of gender within the global North, particularly the United States and Canada, and also Belgium. To do so, we first consider how the global North and South divide came to exist in the popular imagination. However, we should note that although the global North is on the whole powerful and wealthy, it is not monolithic. Societies within it are internally stratified and diverse, such that not everyone in the global North is rich and powerful. So, the term globalization of the North generally refers to the spread and influence of global economic, cultural, and also politic forces in traditional economically developed regions. Particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, this concept encompasses how countries in the Northern Hemisphere, often more economically advanced, participate in and contribute to global processes, including international trade, technological advancement, cultural exchange, and political alliances. It reflects that interconnectedness and interdependence of these regions in the context of globalization. Attempts to categorize the world or order have been based more on politics and economics than geography. These include East and West, developed and developing nation, and first, second, and third worlds. For example, if East-West were geographic entities, then all nations west of the primary region, the United States, Canada, and Latin American nations would be grouped together, while all nations to the east, like countries of Europe, Africa, and Asia, would be grouped together. But this is not the case. Rather, the West is meant to refer to countries, particularly European nations and United States, that benefited from exploits of colonialism, achieving a higher quality of life and more powerful than East.
How did the global divide develop? So the global divide developed over a long period of time, but it is often traced back to the colonial era. During this time, European powers colonized many countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. These colonies were exploited for their natural resources, and their people were subjected to slavery and oppression. Here is an example of how the global divide developed in one specific country. India. India was colonized by the British Empire for over 200 years. During this time, the British exploited India's natural resources, and its people were subjected to slavery and oppression. India gained its independence in 1947. However, it faced a number of challenges such as poverty, political instability, and corruption. The global divide is a complex issue, but it is one that must be addressed if we are to create a more just and equitable world.
So why does the global divides the North and the South? So the primary reason of the North and South gap is the industrialization, as manufacturing industries in the North have shattered. Global divides is based on economic growth differences contributed to the rise of regional populations with contrasting values and ideas for the futures of each side of the world. It is also split according to how developed the country is and the idea of categorizing countries according to their economic and developmental position emerged during the Cold War with the classifications of each of East and West. States that are generally seen as part of the global North tend to be wealthier, less unequal, and considered more democratic, and to be developed countries to export technologically advanced manufactured products, while southern states are generally poorer, developing countries with younger, more fragile democracies, heavily dependent on primary sector exports, and frequently share a history of past colonialism by northern states. Nevertheless, the divide between the North and the South is often challenged and said to be increasingly incompatible with reality. There are many causes for these inequalities, including the availability of natural resources, different levels of health and education, the nature of a country's economy and its industrial sectors, international trading policies and access to markets, how countries are governed, and international relationships between countries, conflict within and between countries, and a country's vulnerability to natural hazards and climate change.
What is the difference between Third World and Global South? So, many times, there is a clear distinction between First and Third Worlds when talking about the Global North and the Global South. So, the majority of the time, the two go hand in hand. People refer to the two as Third World South and First World North because the Global North is more affluent and developed, whereas the Global South is less developed and often poorer. To counter the mood of thought, some scholars began proposing the idea of a change in world dynamics that began in the late 1980s and termed it the Great Convergence. So, as Jack A. Goldstone and his colleagues put it in the 20th century, the Great Divergence peaked before the First World War and continued until the early 1970s. Then, after 2 decades, indeterminate fluctuations in the late 1980s, it was replaced by the Great convergence as the majority of third world countries reach economic growth rates significantly higher than those in most first world countries. So others have observed a return to Cold War era alignment. McKinnon 2007, Lucas 2008. This time with substantial changes between 1990 to 2015 in geography. So the world economy and relationship dynamics between current and emerging world powers, not necessarily redefining the classic meaning of first, second, and third world terms. So but rather which countries belong to them by way of association to which world power or condition of countries such as G7, the European Union, OECD, G20, OPEC, and 11, BRICS, Asian and African Union, and all European Union.
Good day, I'm gonna talk about Global South. The term Global South refers to a group of countries and regions located primarily in the southern hemisphere, often characterized by lower levels of economic development, lower income levels, and less access to resources. Examples of countries in the Global South include India, Indonesia, Nigeria, Mexico, Kenya, South Africa, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, and Vietnam. These are the common situation countries in the Global South have experienced. First, high level of poverty and inequality, which means that in a particular area or society, a significant portion of the population is living in a very poor condition, struggling to meet their basic needs like food, housing, and healthcare. Additionally, there are significant differences in wealth and income between the richest and the poorest member of the society, with some people having much more money and resources than others. Second, limited access to education and healthcare, which means that in a certain place or community, many people have hard time getting proper schooling and medical services. It might be because there aren't enough schools or hospitals, or they might be too far away. Lastly, vulnerability to climate change and environmental challenges, which means that a particular area or a group of people is at risk for being harmed by changes in the environment, such as extreme weather, rising temperature, or natural disaster. These changes can damage homes, disrupt food and water supply, and even threaten lives.
How a new conception of global relation can emerge from the experiences of Latin America. A new conception of global relations can emerge from the experiences of Latin America through a variety of factors and dynamics. Some key elements that have shaped this new conception include: number 1. Historical context. Latin America has a complex history of colonization, independence movements, and struggles for self-determination. These historical experiences have influenced Latin American countries' perspective on global relations. Number 2. Economic inequality and dependency. Latin America has long grappled with economic inequality and dependence on external actors. This experience has led to a growing awareness of the need for a fairer global economic system and a push for a greater sovereignty in economic decision-making. Number 3. Political movements and ideologies. Latin America has been a fertile ground for various political movements and ideologies, including socialism, populism, and indigenous rights movements. These movements have challenged dominant global paradigms and offered alternative vision for global relations. Number 4. Multilateralism and South-to-South cooperation. Latin American countries have increasingly sought to strengthen multilateral institutions and engage in South-South cooperation, which involves collaboration and exchanges of resources, knowledge, and experiences among developing countries. Number 5. Human rights and social justice. Latin America has a history of human rights abuses and social injustice, including dictatorships, state violence, and marginalization of indigenous and marginalized communities. These experiences have led to a heightened focus on human rights, transitional justice, and social inclusion in global relations. And lastly, environmental concerns. Latin America is home to diverse ecosystem and natural resources, and the region has experienced environmental degradation and challenges such as deforestation, pollution, and climate change. As a result, Latin American countries have placed increasingly importance on environmental sustainability and have sought to influence global efforts to address climate change and promote sustainable development. These factors, among others, have shaped a new conception of global relations in Latin America, emphasizing principles such as sovereignty, equality, social justice, environmental sustainability, and regional integration. Latin America countries have actively pursued these ideals through its diplomatic efforts, regional initiatives, participation in multilateral organizations, and advocacy for reforms in global governance institutions.
The term third world country is actually an outdated and politically incorrect term. It was historically used during the Cold War to categorize countries based on their alignment with either the Western Bloc, the First World, the Eastern Bloc, the Second World, or those not aligned with the either, which is the Third World. And today, the most preferred terms used are developed, developing countries, and underdeveloped countries, or less developed countries. These are the terms that are mainly used today, aside instead of using the third world country term. And characteristics of less developed countries can include low GDP per capita. These countries often have lower income levels and struggle to provide a high standard of living for their citizens. Second is limited access to healthcare. Healthcare infrastructure may be insufficient, leading to higher rates of diseases and lower life expectancies. And third is poor education systems. Education may be limited with lower literacy rates and fewer opportunities for quality schooling. Fourth is high levels of poverty. A significant portion of the population may live below the poverty line, lacking access to basic necessities. Fifth is limited access to clean water and sanitation. Clean drinking water and proper sanitation facilities may be lacking, leading to health issues. Sixth is political instability. Some less developed countries may experience political turmoil, corruption, or conflict. Seventh is economic dependence on agriculture. Agriculture often dominates the economy with a lack of diversification into other industries. Eighth and the last is infrastructure deficits and insufficient transportation, energy, and communication infrastructure can hinder economic development. And it's important to note that those characteristics can vary widely between countries, and the situation in any given country can change over time. Additionally, using more accurate and respectful terminology when discussing these nations is essential.
My suggestion that will help countries that are part of the third world for them to be globalized is to deal with its negative effect of globalization. Countries can adopt a series of policies aimed at reducing said impact, including but not limited to investing in new technologies, implementing anti-corruption policies, and implementing policies that protects human rights.